Welcome to another episode of the Thrive Now show. I'm really excited today to introduce my guest, Brigitta Hoeferle, and she is a German business owner who lives in America and has actually lived the American dream. She's the owner and founder of two educational institutions, one for children, the Montessori School in Cleveland, and one for adults, the Center of NLP. Why have two opposite educational facilities? Because children are innocent by nature, and it's the adults around them that shape the growth and potential in each child. Brigitta is tenacious and fun and a grandmaster, and by strategically leading leaders from the heart, she creates a legacy unlike anything you have ever experienced. Lean back, take notes, and apply what you learned from our conversation today. I am so excited to have you. I met you back in 2016, and I'll never forget our encounter. I was taking a course with Joel and Heidi Roberts, actually, and I was going through my own transformational journey at that point. And I was one of eight, if I remember correctly, in a very intimate 3-day, learning how to speak on camera and to get your point across in 2 to 3 minutes. And I remember at one point in that journey, I was like wanting to run for the hills. And I called you because you were assisting that weekend. You were, their right-hand person, making sure that everything went off flawlessly. And I'll just never forget your tenacity, your kick-assness, but also your compassion. And you just held space for me to be. And as a result, I stayed in that weekend and had so many different breakthroughs. And I wouldn't be where I am today without you in my life. So I'm so grateful that we've reconnected. I'm so grateful that you said yes to be on the show. And, the whole show was, the genesis of the show came from my own inquiry of what is it going to take for humanity to rise up from war, rise up from hunger, rise up from abuse, rise up from all the things that keep us in what I call survivalhood. And how is it that we can transcend so that not just 1 or 2% of the people in the world accumulate the wealth, but we actually distribute it in a way in which everyone has the ability to prosper in life. So with that said, Brigitta, what are your words and wisdom of what do you feel it's going to take for humanity to rise up and to thrive and live their best life?
First of all, Jennifer, thanks for having me. And thank you for bringing us back to Nashville 2016. I remember this day very, very vividly. And I felt like I'm either going to make this really, really good, or I'm just going to completely scare her away for the rest of her life and my life. And I'm glad that we get to sit here and actually that it turned all out the way it was supposed to turn out. So thank you for allowing me to hold space for you and for allowing me to look back and really tap into that memory, because it's a fond memory of mine. And I'm so glad that we got to meet. There were some other incredible people in that room. Rising and thriving, and the show is Thrive Now. And through everything that you have not just survived, and you are a survivor, and I truly hope that all listeners know of your story, but it's really the thriving that comes after the surviving. And how do we thrive? And you talked a lot about war and not just adversities, but real trauma that people experience. And I think there are more and more people that are realizing I have actually I am traumatized. I have experienced trauma in my life. And if we look at the word trauma, because I am German and I am linguistic and I love communication, I look at the word and it's the same word and it's the same meaning in both languages, German and English. And when I look at it in German, there's in between, it's Trauma, trauma, but in between is Raum. And in German, that means room, Raum. And there's room for growth. There's room for healing. There's room for thriving. There's room for rising. There's room for each person, however much room they need for whatever desired outcome that they have. And it takes work. So what will it take for humanity to rise and thrive? What will it take for individuals to rise and thrive? And that rising, I see that as a maybe disassociating from the event itself, taking a step aside or taking a step back and actually looking at what can I deduct from this? What can I maybe learn from this? What message does this have for me? And boy, that's easy said when you're literally standing on the outside, very hard to do when you're in the inside, when you are literally living. And I think most of us, you know, that have experienced trauma in some sort feel trapped in it. To find a podcast, to find people, professionals that work with us, to find someone that will for some time just sit with us and have compassion and also have not, it's a compassion compared with what is it that you want? What's at the end of the tunnel, right? I saw a meme a few days ago that said, instead of waiting for the light at the end of the tunnel to eventually come, you know, light that BITCH up yourself. So what is that, you know, how do you light that up? How do you do that? Those are all great questions. And I really think it begins with first acknowledging that we are hurting, humanity as a whole, and us individuals, that we are hurting, and that it would be great for other people to have compassion for us. They might not relate to our trauma or to our stuff, whatever it is. They might not relate to us in a person. They might not relate to us in our belief system. They might not relate to us politically, religiously, or in whichever form or fashion. But that's not the point. The point is to, how can we be compassionate for others, specifically to those that are not like us?
Well, you know, that's an interesting question because, you know, I remember, you know, 2016 was 3 years after, you know, the Boston Marathon bombings, where I was standing 15 feet from that first of two explosions. And, you know, I remember as we would embark on the anniversary of that day, you know, myself and a lot of the other survivors would, you know, be emotional. You know, we'd have memories of that day, and not good ones by any sense in the means, you know, and people, I remember people in my life saying, when are you going to just get over it? And easier said than done. I mean, I was asking myself, when is this nightmare going to be over? And, you know, but in that journey, and it was a journey, that journey, and I liken it to a garden. So basically that experience blew me open. I literally felt shattered on every aspect of my being. And I felt like I was in a pile of poop, like manure. And, you know, and over the course of time, that manure literally, or that compost, was what was starting to fertilize my own higher self, my soul essence, to rise up and to start to express who I really am at the core out into the world, and not live behind a facade that I found myself in before that experience happen. So, I had to learn compassion for those people who don't understand. And it's not my place to actually justify or explain. It's just like, okay, they don't understand. And that gives myself and others that are going through something similar feedback. So the tendency would be to lean in on that and maybe get argumentative, maybe, start, this right or wrong conversation, which ultimately gets us nowhere. It takes courage to just be with that and to accept it. You don't have to like it, but to accept it and to embrace it. And just, we're here navigating our own ship. Right. And so, I want our listeners to understand that when we go through things, I've now understand it's happening for us. It's happening for our evolution. It's literally catapulting us outside of our comfort zone. Now, how we view it will determine our trajectory and our course from there on out. One can lead you down the path of, where it literally empowers you as you work through all of the emotions of it. And let's be clear, like, it is a process, folks. It's a birthing. And if any of you have had children, it literally is that gestation birthing period. And it is not an easy process, but I will say to you, it's so worth it. So worth it. So, and I think that's the key here is like, what if these experiences are designed to help us birth another aspect of self?
And then it begs the question, if we all have that mindset that you just described, because it does take courage, it does take being aware that you actually have a choice, that you're not trapped with this destiny from here on out, that you actually have a choice of how you want to look at it.
Mhm.
And if everyone would have that mindset that you have, Jennifer, there probably would be more people with greater outlook and not feel trapped in the what they see as, that's just how it's life's going to be. That's my destiny. I'm going to be, to use your words, shattered for the rest of my life. Because there's a choice if they want to see it as a rebirth or not. And I don't know the exact factual number on that, but I would argue it's over 80% that are not seeing that they actually do have a choice.
Well, this is it. This is actually, so what you're describing is, what I would call victim consciousness. Now, I will tell you, I've had trauma as a little girl and as a young adult. So, the bombings was not my first rodeo with trauma. But I have a lot of success in my life, in between, some of these experiences. What I will say though is I didn't actually understand. I would never view myself as a victim, ever. However, I was actually had a victim mindset because I would silently say to myself, why is this happening to me? Why? Right. And I felt powerless. I felt disempowered. And then what I would do is I became an overachiever, and that overachiever syndrome where I just had to have the next best thing and had to reach the next goal and the next success. And I was so driven, but driven to the point of burnout because I was literally running from and away or trying to outrun my past and outrun all of, those aspects of my life that I felt shame, that I felt embarrassment, that I felt anger, and I felt sadness. And, I misunderstood that none of that was good, like that we shouldn't feel those feelings, and but the truth is, until we give ourselves permission to feel it and let that energy literally transmute through us, we'll never rise above it. And I think this is it, is like taking responsibility for your choices. So you're right. We have a choice. We can stay stuck in our trauma. We can stay stuck in being shattered. And, that's an excuse, in my opinion, to just stay in bed, where we blame, excuse, and deny life, right? Did we come here to suffer? I don't think so. I don't think that we are meant to suffer. I think we were born. Our God-given birthright is to thrive, but we've lost it along the way. And I feel we now have an opportunity to ignite that spark within us to remember, wait a minute, this is our birthright. You have every right, just like I do, and it doesn't matter where where you live in the world, or, that everybody has this ability. And it's not the government that's going to, spark us to thrive. It's not the political environment. It's not the economy. It's us as individuals. And then sprinkling that and having conversations like you and I are having today to create that little ripple. And then that little ripple over time will start to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's time for us to take our power back and to rise up to our magnificence.
Yeah. You touched on the word why. I like to ask the question why I like to question why when it comes to Simon Sinek's why, right? Start with why. What is your purpose? I don't, and I call this the, getting stuck in the terrible twos, because if you've ever dealt with a 2-year-old and they just start talking, they have all of their questions, no doubt, always start with why. And it will go on until, I don't know, forever, until the cows come home, right? Mommy, why is the sky blue? Well, the sky is blue. And then there's a great, definition of why the sky is blue, an explanation. And then the child will continue, but why? But why? And why is that? But why? And I feel like as humans, we got programmed to ask the question why, where there can be much more important questions to be asked. Because when we ask why, especially, why is this happening to me? It takes you into a victimhood, not necessarily that you are a victim, but in a victim mindset thinking, oh, woe is me. Why is this happening to me? Or when you're asking someone else, the dishes are not cleaned up. Why is that? It allows the other person to go immediately into a defense. So you're really not getting anywhere. Truly, we know this with a 2-year-old, and we know this with us. So there are better questions to ask. What is this teaching me? For what reason am I going through this? How can I get the F out of this? Who can help me? Those are much more powerful questions than the question why.
I 100% agree. And the questions that you were just posing literally give us the access to go deeper within and to recognize our own resourcefulness. Because when we pause and we just slow down for a moment and ask those contemplative questions, what will naturally bubble up is answers. Now, the question is, do we have the courage to live the answers? Because here's the thing, because this is exactly how I ended up transcending through that experience, because that was a 3.5-year journey for me of learning how to rise up and heal from that experience on every aspect of my being, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and eventually financial. And the key piece here is recognizing that at any moment we're at choice. And so I would ask, but even though I made so much progress in that 3.5 years, there was something that still, I felt still kind of mired in that experience. And I was like, you know what? I just really want to close this chapter of my life and learn the lessons I need to learn and to accept the good that came from that horrific experience, because they're both true statements, and move on with my life. And I kept asking, what's it going to take for me to rise up and come full circle? I didn't like the answer, because the answer was, you got to go run the marathon. I'm like, but I wasn't running the day that this happened. I was a spectator. Running a marathon wasn't on my bucket list. Sorry to say. I mean, I'm athletic and I love, but my idea of running is behind a white ball. Very short, sprint oriented type of running, not 26.2 miles. By the way, it's really not 26.2 miles for those of you out there. There's a mile before you get to the start line that you've got to endure. And then there's a mile after the finish line that you got to go pick up your gear. So it's really like 28.2 miles. Let's just be straight here. But anyways, I digress. But the thing here is, I didn't like the answer. I'm like, I'm not doing that. And I had to learn to embrace and actually live the answer. And I did eventually did that. And then the minute I crossed that finish line, I'm like, literally, the minute I crossed that finish line, something energetically shifted in me. And it was as if I literally closed that chapter of my life. I was now at peace. And then what came on the other side is beyond my most magical and wildest of dreams. I never would have guessed that I'd be featured in a book with Jack Canfield. I never would have guessed, it was nowhere in my awareness that I would actually produce 2 Emmy Award winning films to help veterans and nonprofit organizations that are doing a lot of great work for veterans, so that we can really put a stop to suicide amongst veterans that are suffering with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injuries. And then to go on, I mean, the list keeps going. And this is, I say all this to encourage our listeners that life can and will throw challenges your way. The challenge may be an illness. The challenge may be the loss of a loved one. The challenge may be, miscarrying a child. The challenge may be a very horrific accident. I mean, God knows every single one of us has experienced some form of trauma, but it's time for us to transcend the trauma and no longer be stuck and mired in it, but to, as you indicated, Brigitta, is to give ourselves the space in the room to take that experience, to learn from it, to cultivate what needs to be cultivated so that you can actually rise up and flourish in life, because that is possible. That is possible. And I want to detour here for a second, because you born and raised in Germany, and you are now living the American dream. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how, what was it like growing up in Germany, and then what brought you to the States, and how you're living the dream today. Share a little bit about that.
So I grew up in a small village, 600 people back then, I think. And I go back to the village and visit because a lot of my friends literally still live there and have vineyards. It's beautiful. There are vineyards all around. Grew up in the small village, 600 people, maybe 800 today, or 750. But I couldn't wait to get the heck out of there. It was beautiful. It was tucked away. We made great wine. I didn't know that back at the time when I was little, but we lived there until I was 10 years old. And when I was 6, I remember sitting on the floor in our living room, and we had a black and white TV that was sitting on the floor. And I watched some kids show, I can't remember. And there was advertisement that came on. And the advertisement, I didn't know what advertisement was. All I knew that I got some screen time from my mom, like a half an hour. And the advertisement showed children with bloated bellies covered with flies. And and to this day, this picture, just remembering it, brings up a lot of emotions. And I remember seeing that and I cried and I said, Mom, I want to help these children. I knew that that was real, that that was not part of the children's program. I want to help these children. And she says, well, great. How are you going to do that? And I said, I don't know. We'll figure something out. So the next day I go to my friends and we all go to the same kindergarten in the village. And I was kind of the, leader of the pack, if you will. I know that seems to be a shock to some people. And and I gathered my friends and I said, hey, we all have crap that we no longer, play with or need. How about we sell that at a yard sale? We make posters, we sell it, and then the money that we get, we send to, and it turns out to be an advertisement for Bread for the World. And they're like, yeah, sure. So we have fun making posters and hanging them around the village. And then a few Saturdays after that, we actually had the flea market in the center of the village in front of the bread house. There's actually some pictures that I sometimes share on my Facebook page. And it's in front of the bread house where every Saturday the women go and bake the bread and break their pies and all of that, because it's the center of the village. So we have the flea market. We sell all of our things, or a lot of them. We made 180 Deutschmarks, which today probably translate to something 150 dollars. And I send it in. My mom helps me. We send it into Bread for the World. We completely forget about it. About 6 months later, we get a letter in the mail that says, that is from Bread for the World. Dear Brigitta and friends, thank you for making a huge contribution. You have made a difference. And that's where it all started, right? That's what drives me. That is my purpose. That's why I then grew up to become a teacher, to come to the United States, to build a Montessori school. I did that for our own children, so they would thrive, so they would actually have the opportunity to not be put in a box and be like everyone else. Because I feel like that's how I grew up. We all went to the same traditional, public school in Germany, from kindergarten all the way through 13th grade, and then university, right? And I never kind of fit in, Jennifer, honestly. And I never gave in to wanting to fit in. A lot of people that I know just kind of, gave in and said, okay, fine, I'll play the game, I'll just fit in. That was just not me. And I passed that on, thank God, to our children who are now 17 and 20. And that really has made a difference in my life and has made a difference in the people that I work with, and specifically in our family. So that's really the short of the long.
That's amazing. And, talk about your daughter's thriving. Tell us a little bit about your 20-year-old, because she's doing amazing things. And I know your 17-year-old is too, but, I want you to actually talk about your passion for creating a Montessori school, because what I see right now is, I have two nieces who are 14 and 16. And, we've exposed them to success principles. We've exposed them to be their own person. We've exposed them to, give a go at different things, to find their niche, and to, and not to follow the mainstream norm. We have, given them the tools and the accessibility to know who they are at a young age. And I'll remember, my now 16-year-old niece used to be an all-girl band when she was, I think, 7 or 8 years old. And people would go, how did she do that? Because she was put into an environment where she could start to cultivate one of her passions. She got to sing with the runner-up of The Voice, because
wow.
she had this, because from a very young age, I would always ask the girls, what are your goals? What are your intentions? What would you love to see? What are some of your dreams? And, at a young age, they loved the voice, they loved music. And one of the runner-ups to the voice happened to live a couple of towns from where I grew up. And lo and behold, a former colleague of mine and friend actually knew this person, and she was having a private fundraising event to actually get, I believe it was to raise money for Haiti, actually. So to speak about what you've been speaking about, right? So it was an invitation only, high ticket item, and this singer from The Voice was coming to do the private thing. So I call my friend and say, hey, listen, my nieces love, I can't remember her name at the moment, it will come back to me. My nieces absolutely love her. Can I bring them to this fundraiser? I'll happily buy them a ticket as well. And one of my nieces would absolutely love to sing with her. Can we just ask her? And lo and behold, she said yes. So now I have a video all these years later where she did that. And then fast forward, they've written a best-selling book. In fact, they, when the book came out, it had a lot of publicity. They had a lot of opportunities to speak at school, and they came to me and said, Auntie, please stop. I go, why? And they're like, it was too much for them. It was too much for them. They were standing out so much because no one else in their peer group, not even within a few years of their peer group, were doing anything like that. But anyways, let's talk about your kids, because this is it. Like, when we start to give people, children and adults, the freedom to be who they want to be and let them start to cultivate and create, who knows what will happen.
Yeah.
But tell us about Amelie.
Yeah, let's talk about Amelie. Buckminster Fuller said, environment is stronger than willpower. And when we can create that kind of environment, when we can create that kind of container that is safe, that we can allow, in this case, children to grow up into whatever that everyone already comes with a purpose. Okay. We don't have to find one. We already come equipped with a purpose. And I remember asking my mom, when it was time for me to go in Germany, there's 3 different schools after elementary school that you go to. You either go through 9th grade, then you go and do some kind of vocational 3-year continuous education on the job, like becoming a baker or a butcher or a florist or something that is very hands-on, or you go through 10th grade. You become a banker or insurance person or something like that, or you go through 13th grade and then you go to university. Not everyone is meant to go to university, right? So when I asked my mom, when I decide after school what I am going to do, does that mean, Mom, that I have to do this for the entire rest of my life? And she goes, honey, no. And then I remember that just kind of, she goes, you're not going to do the same thing. One thing in your life, I know that you're not destined to do that. And she's right. She was so right. I then went to school to become a teacher. I studied social pedagogy, and I never did anything with it until I had then my children, right? So I remember that so vividly. It had such a big impact on me that I allowed my children to be in that space. That's why I built the Montessori school. That's why when they were older and we were traveling a lot, I homeschooled them. My husband and I homeschooled them, and we allowed them just to figure it out, just to live, soak up all of the wisdom. And I intentionally say wisdom and not knowledge. I soak up all of the wisdom so they will truly become who they already intended to become anyway, without us really interfering a whole lot. Now, that doesn't mean that I just sat back and let them do whatever. No, they received great education in their life. So Amelie was 15 when she said, where we lived before in Cleveland, Tennessee, Mom, I want to do my schoolwork and my success work at the coffee shop rather than doing it at home. Can I do that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Change of scenery is good for all of us. So I drove her to a small coffee shop in town, and she did her schoolwork, her success work there. I pick her up, I go in, and I already see that there's a woman at the entrance of the coffee shop young woman, very attractive. And she sees me and she comes over and she introduces herself. Her name is Erica Scoggins. And I'm like, oh, Scoggins, I have one of our parents whose last name is Scoggins. Yeah, that's my uncle. So we get to talking about that. And she says, I'm a producer. I just came back from Colorado. I live in LA, and I wrote a short film, and your daughter fits the role perfectly. She's everything that I envisioned for this role. Can I cast her? And I said, well, have you spoken to Amelie? That was my first question. Have you spoken to Amelie? Does she even want that? Because Amelie to this point has never mentioned that she wanted to be an actress. And so we talked to Amelie, and Amelie's like, yeah, I'd love to cast. I've never done that. I don't know what that entails. So she gets cast. She gets the main role for that short film. The short film is called The Boogie Woman. In the meantime, has won a ton of awards, like, a big award at the Clermont-Ferrand best known short film conference that you can think of. Anyway, she's won a ton of awards with this short film. And that kind of started everything for her. Now, the kid never, up until that point, said, I want to be an actress. I'm going to pursue, going to school to be an actress and all of that. She was scouted in a small town, in a small coffee shop. And out of that, she cultivated that relationship with Erica, with other directors. She was 15 at the time. She's now 20. She just came back. Well, she lives in Germany since January of this year. While she was in Germany, in the meantime, she personally, I did not help. She did not want me to be part of that vetting process, but she vetted some managers. So she signed a contract 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, no, 3 years ago, with a manager. And he and his team constantly gave her auditions. Although that's not the job of a manager, they wanted to see her thrive. And she got an audition. She didn't know what she was auditioning for, got a call back several times to come back and do another audition. And turns out, because it was a hidden title of what she was auditioning for, turns out she got to be in the Hunger Games, which was just now filmed, Hunger Games #4, which was just got filmed in Germany and in Poland. So her move, going back to Germany, back to her roots, had nothing to do with Hunger Games, but gave her a pole position in already being there, because they were shooting in Leipzig and in Berlin and in Poland. And she got the role. And she's one of the mentors. If you ever watched Hunger Games, she's one of the mentors. And she has about 20 minutes screen time. Peter Dinklage and her are like, best buddies now. And again, this happened not because she was trying really hard. I don't want to make her efforts small, but she's just being herself.
That's the key. And this is the point, right? Like, I think so many people get hung up on, I got to find my purpose, got to find my purpose. What's my purpose? What's blah, blah, blah. I actually want to kind of throw that out, because I did that for years. Like, what is my purpose? But here's the thing. And very early on in this interview, you were talking about the light. Like, okay, where's the light at the end of the tunnel? Actually, here's the thing. She had a nudge. Hey, Mom, I want to go to the coffee shop and actually work on my work there. She had an intuitive nudge, not knowing, not having an expectation of what's going to come from that. And then boom, she now is drawn to an environment. Synchronicity comes into play. She happens to meet this woman who eventually decides they're going to cast her in this, in this short film. The short film then leads, it's literally, you can't make this stuff up. But it's like when you are just being yourself and just following your own inner wisdom and following those, whatever that is for you, then all of a sudden, I didn't have nowhere on my radar was I was going to produce films or even direct films. I didn't go to film school. I went to school for business, like complete opposite end of the spectrum. And then people said to me, how on earth did you direct and produce a film? I just did. And here's the thing, I had in, I haven't shared this, I don't think openly, but I was very selective in who was part of the production team, like my cinematography team, because the story has a lot of depth to it. It has, we've done something that, to my knowledge, has never been done before. We literally infused the film with sound frequencies and light frequencies, so anybody that watches it will actually experience healing vibrations. No matter, it has, nothing to do with my particular story per se. My story is just the conduit and the inspiration, but I invite all of these other people in to have a deeper conversation of what will take to rise up. But fast forward, our cinematographer, we were scheduled to go on a shoot in Sedona. Everything was booked. I mean, you have to understand, months went into planning where we're going to do the scenes, getting all the, all logistical things sorted out. And about 10 days before we're ready to go, my cinematographer calls and says, I can't go. I had a family emergency and I no longer can go to Sedona. I'm like, what? Literally. I'm like, now what do I do? What do I do now? And I had to, first I freaked out, to be perfectly candid. And I'm like, what does this mean? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? But what happened was, over the course of a few days, he actually helped me find the next cinematographer. And I'll never forget the phone call. He called me up and he's like, Jen, I'm pretty sure I found your next cinematographer. And he goes, I'm a little scared to introduce you because I think you're going to love him more than you love me. And I said, no, Dan, that's not possible. And he's like, it's literally a miracle that he's A, available, B, happens to be in Scottsdale, Arizona right now, and C, is willing to take on the job. He was one of the cinematographers for Anthony Bourdain. I mean, there's what, nearly 7.7 billion people on the planet. What are the chances of that? I didn't scout him. I didn't even know this man existed. No disrespect, but it's like, when we allow ourselves to be, and we're intentional, and we literally start to create our reality, but it does require that we get out of our own way too, and not get stuck in the that was supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, it was not part of my plan. And that's the thing, is that, it wasn't part of the plan, but that's it. Like, when we can just lighten up and look
let
at
go of that rigidness. I feel like a lot of people are just holding on for dear life and wanted to have it so bad, and then it doesn't happen because it doesn't allow for that flow.
That's the key. I feel, rather than finding your purpose, find your blissful flow. Find what literally lights you up, and be the light for yourself and for others. And it literally is like, what brings you joy? Mm-hmm. What brings you joy, and do more of that. And when you start to do more of that, I perceive that is when you're truly coming from a place of abundance, truly coming from this thriving space. Is that, that's what I perceive every person has the ability to do.
And don't you think, Jennifer, that it also then takes for someone to really know and hone in on what is it that they stand for?
Yes.
Because you cannot be in an allow flow if you're not clear on, here are my values, here's what I stand for, here's my, here's my set of values, core values.
Well, not only core values, Brigitta, but it's, to your point, what do you stand for? Like, I am a stand for I have multiple actually, but one of them is to helping veterans transcend post-traumatic stress. And some of the work that I'm doing today is about that. Like I am, some people have referred to me like I'm like a pit bull on a pant leg. I'm not going to quit until something changes. I recently, the stat now is it went from 22 on average commit suicide a day to that number is now believed to be closer to 44. That's unacceptable.
Yeah.
You were a stand for the children that were, that were malnourished and that had flies around them, and that you took a stand for. That's the other piece to this puzzle, I believe, of what it's going to take is that find a person, an organization, a group, something that you are committed to being a stand for, making a positive difference for those people.
Mhm.
Because it's like extending the hand to another and literally lifting them up.
Two incredible things to answer your question from the beginning of our conversation. You said deeper conversations. I think conversations overall, building great relationships, locking arms with people, are the answer. And allowing, like, giving our shoulders to stand on, and not suppressing other people's shoulders. That's what I personally stand for children and for adults. Because
What do you
quite
think?
frankly, if we don't make a difference in the adults, we cannot model for our children, and the children are our future.
What do you think the bridge is between, bridging the gap between getting out of the sameness culture that we find ourselves here in America? I can't speak for other parts of the world, but in America, this whole sameness and this, everyone, is, in the same box, so to speak. What's it going to take for us to, transcend that and bridge the gap to empower people just to be? We don't need to be like each other.
Who wants to? We don't want, why are we thriving to be clones? Everyone has a great purpose. Everyone brings uniqueness. And, although Anthony Bourdain went way too early because he was fighting his own demons, I look up to him, and I think he modeled it. He went into not just he didn't go to the nice restaurants. He didn't want to be around the nice restaurant. He wanted to, and he didn't just want to, he broke bread with the people where they were at. And I think that's where it starts out. And through social media, especially over the pandemic, it gotten so bad with putting people in camps of, oh, you're in the politically red, or you're in the politically blue camp, or you are in the Christianity camp, or you're in the Judaism camp, or you're in the Muslim camp. Why? For what reason? And I think
I perceive all of that keeps us separate, right?
for sure.
Like, everyone has a right to their opinion. Everyone has a right to what they believe in. But and I want to actually, start to wrap up on, exactly what's behind you. Listen to relate, not to respond. And that's really what we're talking about here, is that you and I can have very different points of view. How about we just embrace and listen to your point of view, not from a right or wrong or good or bad perspective, but just go, oh, with curiosity, with compassion for one another, because we all have different experiences that shape us and mold us to who we are today. And if we can get out of the labels, whether it's Christian or, Muslim or Jew or, Republican or Democrat. Those are just labels. If you peel them all away, or the color of our skin, and this is, again, no disrespect, right? You peel all of that away, what are we left with?
Bones, our flesh, our being.
Yeah. Our soul, we actually are made up of the same energy.
Mhm.
And when we can start to relate to one another like that, then we will listen to each other differently. We will, God knows what we could create from that space.
And it starts out with that in the Montessori school. And that's one reason why I built a Montessori school, because each child not just has the ability, but we want them to be individuals. We want them to wear the clothes that they want to wear, or dress, fix their hair however they want to do it, and allowing them to have that, again, that safe space, that container where they can be truly who they are. And I want to wrap up with this. Now that you mentioned, the relate, I had a parent call me up. It was rather in the beginning of my successful business career with the Montessori school. And the parent called me up. She has 3 children at my school. And her youngest daughter, I think she was 18, 20 months at the time. Maybe she was already 2, and was diagnosed with leukemia. And the mother called me breaking down, crying. And all I wanted to do was help her. And I felt for her. And I said, I understand. I understand. And I said that over and over until she finally went ballistic on me, Jennifer, because there was no way that I can understand. She yelled at me and she says, you have 2 healthy children. You cannot understand what I am going through right now. And she's right. To this day, and I will never forget that. There are things that I can logically understand, but there are many things that I can only relate to. Let's start there.
And to your point is that if we take the word understand, and just even like I've come to understand myself, sometimes just holding that space, not even saying anything. I love to talk, that. I could go on and on and on, but I'm learning to close my mouth. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and just listen.
Yeah.
And half the time I'm when I'm aware, is like, I don't even need to say anything. They just want someone to hold sacred, safe space where they don't feel judged, they don't feel criticized, and they can just let themselves be, to express. If we could grant each other that kind of sacredness, again, I think the world would be a very different place. So with that, how do people get a hold of you, Brigitta? Like, what are you up to these days? How can people connect with you and learn more? Do share.
So folks can find me under my first and last name. So Brigitta, 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 and last name Hoeferle, Hoeferle. You can find me, just Google me. I'm on LinkedIn with Brigitta Hoeferle. I'm on Facebook with Brigitta Hoeferle. You can find my website, brigittahoeferle.com, as you see it down here, part of it on the banner. Yeah, if you just Google me, you will find me. There's literally only one Brigitta Hoeferle in the world. I am not even kidding.
That does not surprise me, because you are one of a kind rising star, and you deserve to have the only name on the planet, just so you know. And don't worry, I'll make sure that all this information is in the show notes and people can easily find you. And it's just been an honor and a privilege to have this conversation with you. And I so appreciate your wisdom. And I so appreciate, beyond your wisdom, I actually value who you are. And you're such a stand for anyone that comes into your path, for their you just show people the path and the way to their own greatness. And you are just a force to be reckoned with. And I'm so grateful that our paths have crossed and that, we continue to evolve on this journey together of rising and thriving. So it's just been an honor and privilege. So last words of wisdom. And I want you to tie it into your, like, what's the song that gets you juiced up and thriving, and then end on that and impart on words of wisdom.
So one of my favorite songs is from Queen, and I love Queen. I've always been a big Freddie Mercury fan, and the song that I have chosen from Queen, I've totally gone blank right now. It's
I've
Don't
gone
Stop Me
blank
Now.
too.
Don't Stop Me Now. Don't Stop Me Now. Don't Stop Me Now. Yeah, and I want to encourage everyone, don't stop now. You never know what's around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and cultivate that childlike curiosity way of living too. And that's something I see you embrace every moment of every day. You just radiate joy, and your life, everything around you is just, radiates joy. So you're such a blessing to the world. So thank you. Love you. And until next time. And so stay tuned for, another episode of the Thriving Now show, where we talk about and have real conversations of what's it going to take for humanity to step up, to rise up, and to take their power back and to thrive in whatever that means for them. So thank you, and have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.